Good morning, afternoon, evening, or good night. I'm a bit sleepy, but let me tell you all about yesterday, Thursday, September 25th, week 3, day 4, week 14 in total. So yesterday was just our romantic scenes rehearsal day with Gemma, and yeah, I don't have a ton of notes today, so ideally this will be pretty quick. We'll see. I'm not one to speak quickly. So Jen was saying she works a lot with improv exercise like we did on Tuesday, and just kind of getting out of the text and into the understanding and into the character. So looking forward to that. Then she mentioned a technique called acting analysis, and it's requiring of you to step away from the text to show that to show you that you have the skills and imagination to create the character. You do something outside of the text to discover something new to bring to the text. Example, something that Gemma loves to do is to make a cup of tea while running a scene. She also said how when she was in drama school, she would love to catch her scene partner and just like start doing lines like, oh, how do you do lines in this situation? Like, how does it's about to take a bite from a sandwich during lunch change things? And it keeps you on your toes. 2, it really helps just bringing that other environment and kind of taking away some of the ideas and problems. The point of the process of understanding, the point of this project is to really get comfortable with language. And something that we talked about later is that we're not necessarily going to be good when we perform these. And the point isn't to be good or to have a full final project. The point is to understand and get comfortable with the language. That's the purpose of it, which is one of the reasons why a lot of these projects and performances aren't open for the public. So that's something. And then we danced. Oh, well, we were going to dance. We didn't dance quite yet. And then, but she said, sorry, I'm a little all over the place. It's hard to see. It's not super early. It's like 6:30, but let me situate this. But yeah, she talks about the importance of belief in the words. You need to believe the words, and then that will help you understand the words. And we mentioned a little bit about consent because we were going to have some physical touch as we danced. And the way that we've done it at LAMDA to make it really kind of simple and straightforward is that we do a body map. So we go through our whole body and we say, this is green from my head, my forehead, my eyelids, my nose, my mouth, my cheeks, my ears, the back of my neck, my chin. That's all green. You can touch that. And then you work down. It's like, oh, but maybe you have an injury. It's like my shoulder is red. Don't touch my shoulder. Or discomfort or whatever. But you go through your whole body, and then your scene partner repeats it back to you, make sure they understand. And then we did introduce yellow a little bit, that like there's times or amount of pressure that would be uncomfortable. Like hair, like if it's in a certain style, that could be a yellow because you don't want it messed up and that becomes irritating, will take you out of the scene. Or if you've just eaten a lot, you don't want a lot of pressure on your stomach, just kind of things like that. So we went through that as a 4 as our group. And then Yeah, she mentioned how consent has brought us to a better place. To act on your impulses without consent is selfish because it's trying to take a moment or do something, or if you're not going to understand your scene partner, you're doing a bad job basically, because you're selfishly putting your impulses or your desires over their comfort and safety. And then we danced with each other. So we had 15 minutes for 3 songs to dance with our scene partner. We just broke up into 2 pairs. I was with the girl playing Helena, yes, and the guy playing Lysander was with the girl playing Hermia. And so there were 3 different songs, and we kind of moved through our relationship. And it was fun because at first Helena's really interested in Demetrius. And then it turns into Demetrius being put under the spell. And so then Demetrius trying to avoid. What did I say? Helena's in love with Demetrius, and Demetrius is avoidant, and then Demetrius is in love with Helena, and it's got those layers, and it's fun. Then we started working on our scene with Gemma. We're not blocking, we're working on the understanding and interpretation of the words, so we're not worrying about the emotion or too much about the technical side of things. I had some questions like, oh, this line has 11 beats, but if I combine this word, it makes it right, and then why is the stress on all? That's not a Gemma question, and not the point right now. I'll ask Lawrence on Monday. But we need to give people their time and let them figure it out. We don't want to rush anything, even though we don't have a ton of time. And then it was fun. We just stood there and said the lines, and then Gemma would ask questions like, where are you coming from? What are the environment? What do you mean by that? What do you want from that? And how that changed the way we were doing it. And then the other 2 worked on a lot with the physical. No, that was later, not on the physical. But they just worked on a very similar thing. And then we had a break because we only had an hour with Gemma. And we had some independent study and independent work, and then lunch. So then after lunch, after our break, we had some more time with Gemma, and Gemma talked about how she breaks down a unit. So different from Lawrence. Lawrence breaks it down by tactic and objective, whereas Gemma breaks it down by entrance or exit or a change main idea. So it's more subject focused than internal character focused. And then Gemma worked with 12th Night and talked about paraphrasing and using the text that is known. And so it was another kind of improvisational exercise. And so Gemma was going through working with the people who she didn't have an hour to work with already, so that they had some individual help as well. And then it was lots of repetition, practicing this idea and these relationships and getting that into them. And then something that Gemma was saying is a lot is take it out of the face and take it into the body. So instead of being like acting, right, and emoting and at times indicating and demonstrating, it's how can I show this with just my face? And then think of that as like an obstacle, right? You can't use your gestures as much, and so there's that obstacle. Then they did R&J, Romeo and Juliet, for you laymen. And it was all about questions to Juliet is, what are you doing in this room, right? Who are you talking to? Kind of those circumstantial information. And then to Romeo, what is youthfulness? And Gemma talked a lot about vulnerability. And I think of it as also energy and optimism and these heightened feelings. And then it was a lot about just using stillness and telling us what you think. Then Much Ado, they did the scene, and then, well, they have two scenes in Much Ado. It's two scenes, one at the beginning, one at the end. And so they said, Jim was like, don't walk around so much, just focus on the words. It's just a lot about using that stillness. Then Antony and Cleopatra focused on justify and making sure that you are listening. They stood on opposite sides of the room and just talked and listened. Then we had a little 10-minute break. And then Jess came. And we walked around. I was getting so tired and cold. So during our 10-minute break, I ran to get my sweatshirt. And I started chewing gum because I was just sleepy. I did not sleep super well the night before. I stayed up later than I wanted to and intended to. But it's fine. I did not fall asleep, and I pushed through. Jess did tell me to spit out my gum when we started working on voice, though, naturally. But it kept me up. So we started walking around briskly and running in place. Then we stopped and then we were reading our scenes. And we were reading our scenes while we were walking, and then we started running in place, and then we stopped and read our scenes. And then we would grab our bag and pick it up and hold it and move it around and then put it down on every full stop. So question mark, exclamation mark, and question mark. And so we just really felt those, the rhythm and the importance of those endings to sentences. And then and all of this was kind of to get us into our breath, right? We would run around, and then we would enjoy our breath, and we would feel that breath, and where was it, and how could we get out of our heads and try to just like get through the text, and where can we just really breathe and connect with it. So that was cool. And then so something learned, we can slow down and we can be intentional, because we discussed afterwards, every sentence has its own thought. Give that sentence its due, right? Don't rush to the next thought. These activities were disruptive, and it takes you out of your preparation and out of your overthinking and just into your body and into your natural human instincts. And all the characters are trying to achieve something by the actions of words, right? Think about words as actions. That's how Shakespeare thought of them. Then we jogged in place, and then we whispered our scene to our scene partner. And then we did a breathing technique called Qi Gong, or Kai Gung. I don't know. I think it's Chigung. And it's as follows. I'm going to just do it sitting down, but you have your hands like this, but at the bottom of your... I'm going to stand up. That's not going to work. So you have your hands here, and you breathe here, and you breathe out then all the way up here, and one more. And that's one. And then you would repeat it. And the idea behind that is that you would, you're trying to breathe appropriately for your, for the task at hand, right? Because a lot of the time I would have so much air and I'd be like, trying to slow this down. So trying to find that even pace and even breath, and taking in what you need and not more than what you need and not less than what you need. And then we did a blowing the out the candles exercise, which we put our hands on our hips, so like right under our ribs first, and we just felt in our body what it did, and then we brought it to like under our belly buttons, kind of our lower stomach, and just really feeling what that does and how our body interacts with it, and there's like this tightening of muscles that pushes the air out, and then a kind of a pushing out of the diaphragm. So it's like this is the diaphragm and this is the muscle, like whoosh, whoosh. And then for my ribs and obliques go like tense. I'm gonna sneeze maybe. It's not gonna happen, but it won't too. Just cut that off. So then we went through the line, to be or not to be, that is the question, right? Super famous Shakespearean line. And we tried to breathe enough and say each word as an individual. So it doesn't make a total bunch of sense. But for example, our first line would just be to. See, I had extra air. I didn't do that great. To be. To be or. To be or not. To be or not to. And the idea was using just the amount of breath you need and giving the weight and importance to the whole line. Don't just be like to be or, like not leading on, but having that be enough. And we realized that you don't need a lot of breath to speak, and we can mess up our breath by not breathing into the end, right? Just to be or not. If we have too much breath, it's to be or not to be. It gets breathy and odd. And if it's too little, it's to be or not to be. It gets strained, and you just want to use your breath to amplify your sound. To be. That was the idea, I think. And then don't lead your breath in the word. We talked about that. Only take what you need and use it. And then we read our scene again to notice if there were any differences. If really focusing on this breath changed anything. And then, something that one of the students' coaches or trainers or like teachers had told him was, don't breathe at the end of each line. Breathe for the beginning of the next line, which is great because it's not like to be or not to be. That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Right? But I think that might have been wrong. I haven't played Hamlet. But you breathe to say the next line. You don't breathe at the end of line because that's what you're supposed to do. You breathe because it's the beginning of the next and you need that air, which is just a better way to structure it. Then as actors, it's really good for us to be flexible and open to new ideas and methods to be able to work with anyone in any setting. Because as an actor, you're working with directors and producers and different people all the time who have different vocabularies, different methods, different ideas. And so you need to find what works for yourself and know how to use that and implement that. But you also have to be able to be flexible and understanding for someone else's methods. Then we had a 10-minute break, and then we started working / showing our scenes to Jess. We went first, and we tried to do... she asked us first to just do the second half where we were all in it a little more, but that was part of it that we hadn't gone over. So then we went over the first part, and then we just focused on Hermia and Demetrius first, and then we focused on Helena and Lysander. And so for Hermia and I, we really focused on kind of listening and responding naturally and finding detail in the setting and circumstances. And that sneeze is still wanting to come out. And then we will flesh out, that detail will help flesh out things. And for Lysander and Helena, they had them run around to really kind of get that sense of setting. It's like, how long have you been around in the woods? Have you been walking for a long time? And to elevate that breath so that it matched the circumstances. And then work with the verse line and structure with drive so that the structure frees us. Oh, something she suggested is that the structure can actually help us. Sometimes we're like overly worried about the structure, and so we try to run through certain lines or we try to do things. But if we breathe at the end of the line and kind of take our time with it, the structure can actually free us, because that's kind of how it was written. It was written to take a breath at the end of a line, and a line is about an idea typically, or a single breath. And so that's an idea. And then questions to keep in mind is what are our vocal tactics to achieve our desires or wants or objectives. And then we went through every other scene: Winter's Tale, Antony and Cleopatra, Much Ado, Twelfth Night, Romeo and Juliet. And for next Tuesday, Gemma wants us to come with choices based on our wants and tactics for Tuesday, so that we'll start really working things. But that was the day, so like we did a lot, but it wasn't a lot of differences. It was just working on it. So this is a nice short video. You're welcome, Jado. Anyway, no need to prolong it anymore. Love you guys. Hope you're having a great day. Hope that this is entertaining at least a little bit, or informational or something. Honestly, it's mostly for me, but appreciate y'all.